Hi, I'm Anna. I'd have to say that my ideal date is YYYYMMDD. At the end of a long day, I love to sit down by the fire, crack open a can of wine, and spend time with what matters the most to me. And that is a laptop with a full battery and a clean data set with dates in it. Year, quarter, month, day, I love them all. And if this sounds like a perfect evening for you, then you should stick around. And I think that we would be great friends. So all joking aside, and I was going to try to keep that up for this whole presentation, but I get way too excited about dates, so I don't think that I could. So numbers by themselves are generally pretty meaningless. So for example, if I said that you had $5 million in sales last year, you really don't have any idea if that's something to celebrate. But if you can anchor that to another number, say you had 5 million this year and 3.2 million in sales last year, you can now know that that is something to celebrate. And so often when you're getting into analytics, anchoring from one point in time to another place is a great way to start and provide context to your audience. So let's start talking about dating. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so when you're looking at dates with Tableau, and this is just the Superstore data, you can all access it. There's lots of different calculations that can help you calculate dates in chunks and also differences between different dates. So the three kind of basic calculations for dating is date trunk, date name, and date part. So date trunk basically puts if you're using like the month calculation, for example, it puts everything at the beginning of the month. So this is the calculation I used up here, date trunk, month, and then order date. And you can see down here that everything is at the first of the month. If I use date name, that does not, well, and also I'm going to back up. It does include year over here. So this would allow you to look at January 21, February 21, all the way forward. If you look at date name or date part, these produce either the name of the month or the number, the integer of that month. And so this would allow you to group Januaries together and Februaries together and regardless of years. And so date part, you can also use a calculation that looks at month, is the same thing, only instead of producing the name of the month, it produces an integer. So with just these basic calculations, what can we do with them? So one of the things that I've used in lots of different scenarios before is just a straight up heat map. And this can tell you what your sales or your orders look like on different months or different days of the week. So if we drop in order date to the columns here, and we're going to select weekday, that puts them in Sunday through Saturday all the way through. If we drop in order date here on rows, you can see it drops it all the way down. And we can convert this one into month. So now we can see January here in rows and the weekday in columns. So if we drop in sales here, we put this in color, we change this here, and it moved it, of course. So dropping in sales into the color and putting in the label and changing this into a square/heat map allows us to see a heat map of when, hang on a second, let me see if I can move this around. There it is. A heat map of when the sales happen. So you can see that on Tuesdays in October, you have the least amount of sales. And in September, Thursday through Saturday, you were having a lot, but generally your sales occur on Thursdays all the way over here into Mondays. And this can be really helpful if we're doing staffing, if you're looking at, when you need to put in extra people to do shipping or whatever that is. This is a great way to get started with looking at what's happening in a broad picture of your business. So another awesome thing you can do with this would be a year-over-year comparison. So again, if we just drop in order date into the columns, and we're going to convert this to months, and then we're going to put sales here. For clarity, we're going to do a calculation to do running total of sales. So I'm going to switch my sales to be a running total. And then I'm going to drop in order date here. And I'm going to convert this into year and put it into color. So now I can see a running total of sales from 2019 to 2022. And you can kind of see how your sales can compare in a year-over-year view. So we talked a little bit before about, not wanting to hard code in years, and why if you've done that right now, you're really regretting that you did. I personally have done that. It's super fun. So what you can do is create a calculated field, and I will have it that only shows the last 2 years. So what this does is looks at the year of the order date, and we'll just start off here, and sees if it is the exact same as the max order date. So let's just start with that one part here. And we're going to put that into true. Well, actually, we're going to, so you can have a better view here. So it puts in 2022 into its own view. So it's capturing that. So when 2023 data comes, it's going to include that same thing. So we go back into our view. It just says, is the max year of this the same as the previous, as the year in the thing, in the data set? If we want to include the year prior to that, we use a calculation called date add, and I'm going to give you a little bit more information on that in just a second. And so this says if the year is the same as the previous year, then also include that as the Boolean true false statement. So if I click OK, yes, now 2021 has moved into the true. So if this is a view that I'm doing for my boss, I can include this to just say true. And every year, as more and more data comes, it will automatically update this. Let's take a deeper look at what the date add actually does. So the calculation that I used here in the example is date add, and in quotes here is what you want, the time interval that you want to add. So you can use day, month, year, and it will add in that amount of time to your original date. And so in this case, I want to add 1 day to the order date. So you can see here, the original date was the 3rd, and then I added 1 date and it got into the 4th. The kind of sister calculation to this is date diff, and this calculates the difference of days in between 2 dates. So again, date diff, the integer or the measure of time that you want to know that shows up between those two is day. And so you want to know the number of days between order date and ship date. So here we have order date of the 3rd, ship date of the 7th, and the difference between that is 4. So you can see all of these all the way down. And so back here on this calculation, we used that date add to say, so we have the same calculation of the max date add minus year. So what was the second most recent year? And that is, and if the current year is equal to that, then include that in the calculation. So I'm not watching the chat. And so if you have any questions on that, I'm hoping Anna or Nelson will jump in to this. No? Okay. So anytime that you're using date in anything, you absolutely positively have to understand your dates, how often it's being updated, the cadence that it's being updated, because what will inevitably happen if you don't understand that is that you'll show half of a month of March compared to a full month of February, and then your boss will wonder why like everything tanked, and you'll go back and realize it's just you don't have a full month showing. You don't have a full month of data in the data set. So a way that we can filter out and just show months that have a full date, there's a calculation we can do. And whenever I'm playing with calculations and making sure I have it set up, I like to just put the date on the rows and have them all the way filled in so that I can, go through and make sure that the calculation that I'm filling in works. So I'm going to go here and we're going to create a field called full months. And I'm going to, so what this field does, and I will figure out a way to distribute this workbook if it's useful to people. This says, I want to add in, here, we'll work from our way all the way in, like it's nested in like, math class in high school. And so we want to date trunk the month, the date to the month. So we want to put all of the dates in at the first of the month. And so that would list all of the dates as March 1st, February 1st, etc. And so then on that date trunk, you want to add into the next month. So if the original date was March, we wanted to show April, the following month. Okay, you with me so far? And then we want to subtract 1 day. And so that would give you the last day of the month for the order date. So it would show you February 28th, May 31st, whatever the last day is, because each month, 30, 31 days, 28, 29, whatever. So you don't want to have to manually code that in, especially with leap years. So it's asking what that is, and it's calculating in that date. And then it's asking you if it is less than or equal to the max date that is here. And let me show you what that looks like. Go all the way down here. So for October, we only have data through the 22nd. And so this calculation says all of this September data, just don't, it's not, there's not a full month here, but all of these other dates, we have a full month of this data. So as this data would get updated and as we get the rest of October's data here, we would be able to have a full month view here. So this is a calculation I use all the time. You can use it with week or year or whatever you want to use, and this allows you to just compare full sets of time periods to each other. Oh, hang on. So the other calculation that I do quite a bit is looking at last year to date to this year to date. So if we're thinking about this data again, we have data through the end of October. And so I want to compare 2022 data through, I guess it was to the 20th of October to 2021 data through October, because I want to see how those two time periods are comparing. So let me pull up that calculation. Dropping the order date back on rows. Okay, so what we're doing here is that same kind of calculation with max order date to see if the date difference between max order date and the actual order date equals 0, or you could just say if it equals the same, and order date is less than the max order date, then it is the year to date, versus that same calculation minus 1, which would give you the year, the previous year. And I'm going to go ahead and put that here into columns. And I'm going to scroll down so you can kind of see what this looks like. So we only have data through the 20th of October. I'm going to make this bigger. Year to date. So we scroll up. It's going to show all of 2022 data. So this data here, we don't have data for our 2022 in December. So it's not going to assign those anything. But here, when I have 2021 from the 20th, it's going to start putting it into last year's to date. So this allows you to compare last year's current data to this year's current data. And a thing that I really like to do, bullet charts are my favorite data set. And I'm going to kind of go a little quickly here because I want to cover a really cool thing, is looking at a current time period compared to a prior time period. So we have our year to date and our last year to date already defined. And if we create a calculated field of current year to date, and if we do if, or how did I name that? Filter to last date. So I'm saying if the filter, the calculated field that we just did equals year to date, then I want to know what the sales are. So if we go ahead and click OK, and we drop in this here to current sales, actually we're going to put it into columns. And then if I'm going to duplicate this, and I want to look at the prior year to date. And we'll change this to last year to date, then sales. All right, so let's drop this in here to the detail tab. And on rows, we're going to put in subcategories. So you can get kind of a view of the sales year to date of the by subcategory. And then for the analytics, I'm going to go into creating a reference line by cell. And I'm going to select the prior year to date and then click OK. And now you can see the bar is the current time period, and then the line is the prior time period. We could even get a little bit fancy with colors. Date. And then you can have, have a nice view of full color range here of, the subcategories that have decreased the most and the ones that have increased the most from those two time periods. So I've created this view lots of times. It's a really useful view to compare this compared to that. But inevitably, every single time that I compare it to, you start off with current year to date versus last year to date, this month versus last month, this quarter versus that quarter. And then I've created parameters where people can select each of those different options. But inevitably, somebody's going to come and say, well, I want to compare June and July to August and September because we created a new marketing campaign and I want to know if that marketing campaign had any impact or whatever random date is. And so at first I was creating this, parameters that were like these ridiculously long, every single possible option that was available to them. And suddenly it was like, I don't have time for this. This isn't going to work. So what I did, and we'll go through this very quickly, is, and I'll show you what it actually looks like over here, is allow people to self-select dates. So I created a calendar, and I'll go through all of these steps with you, where people can select whatever they want for the current date, and then they can select whatever they want for the prior date, and it'll automatically select. And then you select the first date and then the second date, and it'll group those together. When you select a third date, it will clear the cache and it will select that. It'll have that new view for you. You can select any order that you want it to be in, and it automatically updates. So we're going to go through how to build this. Hopefully. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do is create a calendar view. And to do that, we're going to create a trellis chart axis. And I did not come up with the math on these trellis charts. If you Google it, there's lots of different people who have done the math on these trellis charts. Okay. Okay, and then we need to, hang on a second. We need to put in year, order date by month, and then the order date by year. And we're going to put the year up here, and then we're going to calculate this using the month of order date. Discrete. And then we're going to turn this into label here. Okay, so this just makes the view. We will come back to this and we will clean this up. Now we're going to create a parameter, because in order to have, we can't use filters on this because you have to be able to have a separate place for the current date and the prior date. And if we use filters, then it'll filter out both of those. So we're just going to create a parameter that is a string, and we're going to create it. That is called current date. Current selected is actually what we're going to do. Now we need to create, oh, I already have it correct from before. Great, we're going to use the one I already have. Now we're going to create an action parameter to update the parameter in our dashboard. Okay. So what this parameter is doing is it looks at the length of what's currently in that parameter. If the length is less than 15, then it adds whatever you selected to the parameter. So it includes what's currently in the parameter and what's previous in the parameter. Otherwise, it just puts what's in the parameter. So this is how we get that third date to be deleted and like start over fresh when after people select the first date or the second date. Click OK. We're going to put the parameter update in here. Okay. Now we're going to put this onto the view. Date selection. Nope, not that one. Here we go. So what we want to do next is create a parameter action. Where is that? Actions. There we go. Remove all of these. Okay. So it actually already exists because I had built this out before I cleaned it out. So on that worksheet, anytime you hit it, we want it to update the current selected parameter. Click OK. Okay, let's go ahead and add in that parameter so you can see what's happening. Current selected. So when I click on November, it shows you November. When I click on February, it adds in February. When I click on August, it deletes August. And it deletes the other two and just adds August. So you can kind of see what's happening with those two dates. So the next thing that we're going to do is we want to be able to pull out those fields from those parameter fields and create a date from it. We're going to go back into our tried and trusty way of listing the order date. And then we're going to put in the current selected parameter so we can see what that is. And then we are going to create some dates. And I'm starting to run out of time, so I'm going to have to go faster here. Okay, so what this is doing, very high level, is you are, I'm going to delete all this first. It is looking for the characters in a certain place that are based on when this little tilde is selected. So let's just go ahead and put that in for right now to show you. So right now it's just pulling in the 2021 date, but let me put in the whole thing so you can see what it looks like. Let's put in the actual exact date and discrete. So this pulls in whatever it is, the first date. I'm going to go back in here. And so because people can select the first date, second, you don't know if somebody's going to select the end date first or the beginning date first. It is also calculating whether or not the date is before or after and the length of all of these different things. So you have this for date 1, and then we are also going to do the same thing for the second date that's in there. Duplicate. To put that in here as an exact date and discrete. Okay, so you can see here that it's putting these things into an actual date format for your date 1 and then your date 2. Go down in here, and then we want to be able to color your view. And I'm going to switch back over here to the actual thing rather than putting in this. I'm going to go through the steps here. So this calculation allows you to select to have the gray versus the blue. If the date is within the date range and before and after the date range, go ahead and color it. Otherwise, leave it gray. And I also use this same calculation to populate the bar chart. So if that color is selected, then show me sales. And so the end result here is this view. And I created it using the exact same lines and the bars here. The only other kind of magic that I added into this view is that I added a highlight so that it overrides selecting fields, and so it always looks the exact same on the view. And I know I went really fast, but I wanted to share this really cool thing with you, and I will share this workbook with you so that you can go through and get through all of this yourself. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Anna, any questions? Were there any? I didn't watch the chat at all.
Yeah, let's see here. We got some questions. That was amazing. Great job. The parameter is, it blows my mind. I think that's I can think of so many use cases for that. All right. So there were a few that we had some responses in the chat. So the one in the Q&A, it says, if let's say date add month +1 and the month is 12, will it shift to the next year? So yes. Using date add, will you shift? That's actually a great question, because are you just going to go back to any arbitrary January? Good question. Then the answer is yes. Let's see.
I see Mary asked, could you use today instead of max date? The answer is yes. I never do, because my data is rarely has today's data. So I almost always want to look at the most recent date of the data. So the answer is 100% yes. But again, you have to know your data and what you want to do to be able to make that switch.
I love that answer because you're so spot on. Like if you're not getting real-time data and the data is not streaming in right now, then today, you know, and you may also on purpose do like today -1 so that you always get yesterday because you know today is going to be incomplete, right? And so I love the answer. It's contextual. And your data may be spotty too, right? You may only get data on Tuesdays for some reason. Okay, cool.